Good morning. Welcome to Political Dharma with Alan Zundell. At least it's morning here on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025, and I have some stories for you about alternative political parties. The first one is that Ballot Access News has released more figures on the recent elections showing that parties of the left have advanced not only in the presidential race, but also to some extent in the U.S. Congress. Their vote for candidates for the U.S. Congress, as well as state legislative races. And the Libertarian Party has been regressing. My second story has to do with the Libertarian Party as well. The Libertarian National Committee decided on Sunday night that they were going to sell their office building in Virginia near Washington, D.C., and this decision has been much criticized and connected to the scandals surrounding former chair Angela McArdle and accusations that she's trying to undercut and destroy the Libertarian Party. I also have some segments from an interview McArdle did about a month ago defending her decisions. And then finally, some supporters of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have started a new group to help ensure better ballot access to independent and alternative party candidates. Those are my stories for you today, and let's get right into it. Now, I did report on the figures for the presidential race before of how alternative parties did, but I'm going to put these up again just to start out so we can do a refresher here. This is the Green Party, which is generally regarded as a party of the left, and the Libertarian Party generally regarded as a party of the right. And it shows how their vote for their presidential candidate has changed over the last 4 election cycles. Back in 2012, Green Party candidate Jill Stein got about 470,000 votes, which was about 0.36, roughly 1/3% of the total vote for president. So the Libertarian Party, in comparison, got 1,276,000 roughly, which is almost 1% of the presidential vote. That come for the Green Party. This was a movement forward in 2012 after Ralph Nader's run in 2000. They had a couple of candidates in 2004, 2008 who didn't do very well. So it represented an advance under Jill Stein as their presidential candidate. Now, I've highlighted 2016 in purple to show that this year was anomalous. It wasn't in line with the trends otherwise. The Green Party got over 1 million votes, almost 1.5 million, 1,457,218, which is over 1% of the vote, 1.07 more exactly. And the Libertarian Party also increased its vote share by about 4-fold, just like the Green Party had, to 4 million, almost 4 million and 4.5 million, 4,489,341, which is 3.28% of the vote. Very good for a alternative party in a presidential race. In 2020, now 2016 was different because there was a lot of dissatisfaction with both the Republican and the Democratic candidates, neither of whom has served as president before. That was Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And a lot of Democrats were peeved about the way Bernie Sanders had been treated in the primaries. So they turned to alternative parties, particularly, I think, the Green Party. So this was a surge in third-party support across the board. And it didn't really fit the trends from 2012 up until today. So in 2020, there was a setback. Green Party got about 407,000 votes, which was about 1/4% of the total vote. That's a little less than they got in 2012, but at least it's not too far of a fallback from what it was in that year. It was a big fallback by almost 1/3 from what it was in 2016. Same thing with the Libertarian Party. It fell back from what it got in 2016, but it was more in line with 2012, actually a little bit better than 2012. This time they got almost 2 million votes. 1,865,535, which is over 1% of the total vote, 1.18. So the trend there, if we exclude 2016, is for the Green Party to build and then fall back just slightly in 2020, and then Libertarian Party continues building if you disregard 2016. Going from 2012 to 2020, they are building their support by almost 500,000 voters. Let's see, 8 minus 2. Yeah, that's good 500,000 votes. In 2024, this last election, then the Green Party just a little over doubling its vote from 2020 to 862,049 votes. That's over 0.5%. So best showing yet since Ralph Nader. The Libertarian Party, however, rather than doubling their vote, they cut it in half, or even less than half. They got about, that's about a third of what it was before. So they got 650,126, which is less than the Green Party had. So the Green Party actually did better than the Libertarian by far in this last presidential election. Let's move on to figures from Ballot Access News about the vote for congressional candidates. Now, I only have the figures for the Green Party, but it shows in both these cases that they got more votes than 2022. Votes for Senate candidates from the Green Party in 2022 were almost 88,000, but in 2024, that was about 3 times as much, 288,495. So quite a bit more than the previous congressional election. And in the House, they went from 79,669 to 204,714. So once again, votes for congressional candidates in both the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House for the Green Party candidates across the board shows advance in that party. They also note that immediately after the election, the Green Party was on the ballot in 18 states, whereas in 2020, it was on 15 states. So it pulled ahead in terms of the ballot access it was able to retain or gain in 2024. And they also note that if they got 6 more votes in New Mexico for president, they also would have had ballot access there for the next election. And in Missouri, all they needed was 8 more votes for a lieutenant governor, and they would have had ballot access there. So in terms of ballot access, they're doing better than they had in 2022. All right. Okay, the Working Class Party, which is a very small party you probably haven't heard of. It's not to be confused with the Working Families Party, which exists in a few states and has been around for a while. Working Class Party doesn't run a presidential candidate, but they did run candidates for Congress as well as state offices. And it had its best showing ever in 2024. The Ballot Access News reports it has existed since 2016. And this year, its 9 nominees for U.S. House in California, Illinois, and Michigan received 123,788 votes, not as much as the Green Party. Anyway, another party of the left, when it's called the Working Class Party, you can tell it's a socialist party, and it did very well in this last election, just like the Green Party had. Now let's move to state legislative races. And here I made for comparison the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, independent candidates, and Working Families Party candidates. Now, Working Families is different than the Working Class Party, as I just said. First of all, let's look at the Greens. State House votes in 2022, they got about 25,000 votes, and in 2024, they get about 56,500 votes, so about doubling from 2022 to 2024 in terms of the number of votes they got across the board for all their state house candidates. In the state Senate, for some reason, they fell back quite a bit in 2022. They got 83,411, and in 2024, they got only 17,583. So that's quite a setback. I don't know why that is. I'm assuming that it goes against the trend. Maybe they didn't have as many candidates for Senate seats in the various states as they had 2 years ago. That's the only possible explanation I can come up with why there would be such a disparity between their vote surge in the candidates for state house versus their candidates for state Senate seats. Libertarian Party, however, if you look here, both in the state house candidates and for the state Senate candidates, they lost ground in both of those. 2022, it went from roughly 405,000 votes to about 633,000. So fell back almost 100,000 votes. Let's see, close to 90,000 votes. And in the Senate seats, they went from 377,683, to about 195,000. So again, a setback of over, almost 200,000 votes. So quite a setback. Now I put independent candidates in for comparison because in general, they do better than alternative party candidates. And there wasn't a lot of change from one election to another. A little bit, they did a little better in 24 than they had in 2022, going from roughly 500,000 votes for independents and state house seats in 2022, and then getting over 500,000 votes from 496,000 to 511,000. Independents in state Senate seats went from about 228,000 to about 239,000. So about 11,000 votes more. So roughly the same, which shows that it's not just that people are turning to other candidates, but in particular in the state house, they went towards the Greens, and in both, they went against Libertarians, where independents stayed about the same. Same thing with the Working Families Party. They did better than in 2022, but not exceptionally better. In state house seats, they went from about 182,000 to about 230,000. So that's about 50,000 more. That's pretty good. And in state Senate seats, they went from about 242,000 to about 263,500. So 20,000 gain. Don't know how many candidates run, so I can't break it down per candidate, but they stayed roughly the same, did better. Working Families Party, though, often cross-nominates Democratic candidates for state seats. They don't run a presidential candidate, but they do cross-nominate Democrats in state house and state Senate seats. So this may be why they do so much better than Green Party candidates or Libertarian Party candidates. All right, let's turn to yet another party of the left. This would be the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Its presidential candidate in this last election was Claudia de la Cruz. And if you saw the thumbnail for this video, she is the woman standing next to Green Party candidate Jill Stein there. So you have some sense of who she is and who that person on the thumbnail is. The party, her party, is a Marxist party, received its highest presidential vote ever, a total of 171,944, which is not as good as the Green Party. And they say this is the highest presidential vote total for a Marxist party in the United States, the first time topping 100,000 votes for president since 1932, when the Communist Party was in its heyday and received about 103,000. So Party for Socialism and Liberation is still a pretty small party, and it only runs presidential candidates, but it did do much better than it had in previous elections and outpaced any previous Marxist party in history for the United States. They did have one party in a state, the Workers' Party of South Carolina, not to be confused with either the Working Class Party or the Working Families Party. The Workers' Party of South Carolina did nominate Claudia de la Cruz, so they're associated with the Party of Socialism and Liberation. And they had 9 nominees for the United States House of Representatives, and they got about 123,000 votes, so 123,788 votes, and that's compared to the Green Party's 204,714. So almost, better than half of what the Green Party did with all those 3 candidates for the House. And that's many more than the Green Party got in 2022 for U.S. House of Representatives. Okay, so parties of the left doing much better this year than they had in 2022 or 2020, and Libertarian Party not doing so well. Now, Libertarian Party, as I've reported over the last year, had a lot of controversy within it during this election season. There were flirtations with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a potential presidential nominee, and he's not really, I wouldn't say he's any kind of a well-known libertarian or known for his libertarian views. And also they were flirting with Donald Trump as well. And there's been accusations within the party that the former chair, Angela McArdle, and the Mises Caucus, which she was a part of, were deliberately sabotaging the effort to elect their own, not elect, but vote for their own candidate, Chase Oliver. I don't think anyone had any illusions he was going to be elected, but they were undercutting his campaign by all these efforts to, try to help Trump, apparently. So what I'm getting to here is they had a vote. The Libertarian National Committee had a vote on Sunday night, and they decided to sell their office building. Now, this was criticized on a number of grounds. For one thing, somebody mentions that this was unpopular among their constituency, the members of the party who had donated to buy this office building and to keep it over the years. There were claims that they needed to sell it because the roof was leaking. The rejoinder to that was that they had insurance to cover the roof. There was also complaints that they only had one bidder. They should have got more bidders to get a better price. They're actually selling it for less than they paid for it. They're losing $250,000 on the sale from what they bought it from. So a lot of complaints about this sale and tying it to past complaints. And what I wanted to get to here was an opinion piece on the Third Party Watch, an online publication by George Phillips, or Phillips. I wish I should really find out how to pronounce his name. This is an opinion piece from Kara Schultz, presumably a member of the Libertarian Party, and she is pretty much saying that the party is now dead. Libertarian Party National, 1972 to 2025. That is from its birth in 1972 to its presumed death now in 2025. It was a good run while it lasted, she says. And last night, the Mises Caucus-controlled LNC, that is the Libertarian National Committee, ended the Libertarian Party as a national force. They've dismantled the infrastructure. It's clear the goal was to eliminate any perceived obstacle to a Trump GOP victory. She mentions that there was a strategic takeover of the party, in her opinion. What seemed like a new direction by the Mises Caucus was a calculated takeover, in her words, fueled by outside support and aimed at aligning the Libertarian Party with the GOP, that is the Republican Party. Continuing on in that same article, she mentions systematic destruction from firing staff to alienating donors, losing ballot access, actively undermining our own candidates, thus the poor results we saw for the Libertarian Party. They've gutted the party's ability to function. Leaders were pushed out, replacing those prioritizing GOP agendas over libertarian principles, fiscal mismanagement, accusations of embezzlement by former chair Angela McArdle, and a party in debt with no real donations coming in. What they mean is fewer donations, I guess, or smaller donations. And lies. They voted to sell the headquarters, and here she goes through the accusations about not getting a good price for us, and that they really didn't need to sell it. But this is a way of further undermining the party in her eyes. So a lot of turmoil within that party, which explains somewhat their poor performance in the elections of November 2025. But their former chair, who resigned shortly after this interview I'm about to play clips from, did defend her decisions to align with Donald Trump in the election. And here's an interview she did with Reason Magazine, which is a libertarian publication, one of their producers for their videos. This is Zach Weissmiller of the YouTube channel Just Asking Questions, an interview that he did with former Libertarian National Committee Chair Angela McArdle about a month ago in February, talking about the pardon of Ross Ulbricht, which was one of the goals of the Libertarian Party. Ulbricht was like a cryptocurrency guy who had some kind of website, and he got in trouble for what was happening on that website. I guess some drug dealing or sex trafficking or something that he didn't have part in. He just put up the platform where these things could happen and financial exchanges could happen. That's my understanding anyway, without having looked deeply into it. Anyway, they're interviewing her about how they got a pardon for Ross Ulbricht and what kind of deal they had with Donald Trump's campaign in order for this to happen, and how that affected their own candidate, Chase Oliver. I want you to note a couple of things going into this. LNC refers to the Libertarian National Convention, and they're referring to the invitation of Donald Trump to speak before their national convention, which is unusual because Libertarian Party inviting a Republican candidate to speak before them. They also invited Robert F. Kennedy Jr. while he was still an independent candidate. And then the other thing is Jo Jorgensen. She was the Libertarian Party candidate in 2020 when they did fairly well, and then the drop off here happened in 2024. So when she mentions Jo Jorgensen, she's talking about their former presidential candidate and how the Trump campaign saw that the vote for her in 2020 may have affected his election. So they're interested in getting Libertarian Party support. So these are about 4 minutes of clips from that interview, and you'll be able to judge for yourself what McArdle has to say in her own defense.
Trump is a deal maker, so you tried to make a deal, or you did make a deal.
Yeah.
What were the terms of that deal beyond giving him the opportunity to speak at the LNC?
So I met with Donald Trump over a year ago now, initially. The first person who reached out to me was Rick Grinnell, who was not officially on the campaign, but is close to President Trump and was trying to help him out. And Rick, who was a former ambassador to Germany, is, I think, also a very good deal maker and understood, Jo Jorgensen. She really tied up that particular, that little bit of the vote. They think that maybe they would have won the election if it wasn't for her. And I don't know. I have thoughts on that. I don't think that libertarians pull strictly from the right. But it was important, and so he was like, we want to know what libertarians think about Donald Trump. And I was very gracious, but I also provided constructive criticism, big fan of not starting new wars. President Trump called me on the phone. I spoke with him for about 45 minutes. He had done his research. He knew all about me. He was very warm and friendly. And of course, was like, I got to get the vote. How do I get the libertarian vote? And I said, I can't make you our candidate. I can't endorse you, things like that at our convention, not when you're running as a Republican. But I can tell you how to get the small L vote, and if you want to compete with us, you can do that. And so we sort of agreed to keep that dialogue going. I went down to Mar-a-Lago just a couple of weeks later. And I'd really, kind of sweat over this ask and was like, it's got to be Ross Ulbricht. And he said, I love freeing people. I'll do that. I love freeing people. I'll just walk out and I'll say, free Ross. And I'll just drop the mic. And I told him, I was like, people are going to lose their minds. They are going to go nuts. It may not even matter what else you say. If you say that and they believe you and you're sincere, that's it. You're going to get support.
You were basically offering him a way for whatever presentation he was going to give and messaging that he was going to do on the trail that could resonate with small L libertarians a little bit better. What about the, one of the things that ended up happening after Chase got the nomination was that you outlined a strategy where you were basically going to pour resources into states that were more blue states and kind of stay out of states that were more competitive or leaning Trump. Was that part of the deal?
Oh, not with him. No. I mean, that all, it was sort of this glorious miracle, the way things unfolded with Chase Oliver getting the nomination. Everything the stars just sort of aligned. And I'm certain, not everybody in the party thinks that. People were very angry about Chase Oliver getting the nomination. But from my perspective, it couldn't have been better for making sure that Donald Trump was incentivized and to stick to his promises and felt secure in it and that he wasn't going to get screwed over in this deal. But did he get between 0.8 and 1% of the vote that might have otherwise gone to a libertarian? Yes, he did. And the down ticket votes for libertarian candidates, as opposed to the presidential votes, reflect that.
There are some libertarians who say that you sold out the party to MAGA and Trump. What is your answer to that?
I did not sell anything out, but I took advantage of an incredible opportunity. And we have accumulated more political power than we ever have. And I think that his team and everyone else who's a major player, they're all keenly aware.
How central to the future of the Libertarian Party do you expect this kind of deal making with the major parties to be?
I think it's critical. I think we're at a pivotal moment in libertarian history. If we want to, be irrelevant, we could certainly choose that. I hope that I have good successorship with the person who comes after me. I don't intend to run for another chair term. But this is the way. This is political influence. And if we continue on this trajectory, we will probably have people getting elected at the federal level in 8 to 12 years.
Okay, that interview was about a month ago before she resigned from office, and they subsequently elected a new chair of the National Committee who is not affiliated with the Mises caucus that she was affiliated with. It was good to hear her side of the story because mostly what I've been seeing online are the criticisms of her decisions and her strategic acumen. So to hear what she had to say about it was illuminating. And in my considered opinion now, I would say that her strategy had a good side and a bad side. And I say this from my knowledge of Green Party history, which I'll get to in a moment. I'd say the good side was, yes, they had an opportunity to influence a major party to give them something that the party wanted. This is probably the most, under the current electoral systems that we have in the United States, the most an alternative party can hope to get is to influence one of the major parties to move closer in its direction and enact some things that its constituency wants. So I think the Trump campaign approaching them was an opportunity that she should take advantage of. So she saw it as something they could ask for and then gave them some advice on how to attract libertarian votes. I think all of that was fine, and it's something that a party should take advantage of. Where I think she went wrong is in then deciding, as he mentioned, to put resources only into states where it wouldn't hurt Donald Trump, which you can see in the outcome of this election was that the Libertarian Party did much worse in its presidential campaign and in statewide office, in state level offices, so that it did harm to the party by not aggressively contesting the election. That is, not only did they make a deal with Trump, but she decided to hold back from really competing hard with the Republican candidate, which meant that their party did much worse. I think that if a party is going to tell one of the major parties that it is willing to give them some advice on how to attract support from inside, that is saying, here's something we would really want. If you would do that or promise to do that, you would probably get some votes that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten. That is a way to exert some kind of leverage, but at the same time, you need to keep competing with them to retain that leverage and to show that you're not just going to lay down and die for them. So it's not a matter of trying to join in a coalition with a major party. As she says, she thinks they're in a coalition of a MAGA, a libertarian coalition. It's going to destroy the party. If you think of yourself in terms of being a part of one of the major parties, inevitably you're going to get absorbed. Now, the Green Party learned this lesson, I hope. Back in 2000, as I mentioned, Ralph Nader ran for president and he did fairly well for an alternative party candidate, but then he got accused of spoiling the vote for Al Gore in electing George W. Bush. So that the Green Party then had a big debate leading up to the 2004 presidential nomination, their candidate for the presidency that time around, and they bypassed Ralph Nader and nominated someone who was a real unknown on the national scene, and they did terribly in that election year. The reason they did that is they had a big debate over whether it was worth all the negative feedback and blowback from that accusation of having spoiled the race for Democrats. And so they kind of held back. They had a safe states strategy, which sounds just like what Angela McArdle was doing. That is, they would compete in states where they were not going to hurt the Democratic candidate, and then kind of hold back in states where they could affect the vote for the Democratic candidate. And all that was a big blow to the party. It discouraged a lot of Green voters and led to the party having the next election not do well either. So that election and the one presidential election following it, the Green Party lost a lot of ground for what they had gained with Ralph Nader's couple of presidential runs in 1996. and in 2000. There's actually a very good used book you can probably find in a used bookstore online, like I think Bookstore is a used part, or maybe it's biblio.org. Anyway, look online and you can find a book. It's called The Green Party Strategy Debate, and it has a lot of the documents from that period where they were discussing this leading up to it. It's very good political education if you can get a hold of a copy. And it was edited by none other than Howie Hawkins, who was the presidential candidate in 2020 and did very poorly, I think, partially because he wasn't a great candidate, partially because the voters were much more concerned. Now they had already had a taste of Donald Trump, and a lot of people towards the left and Democrats were much more willing to vote for a candidate like Joe Biden just because they didn't want to see more of Trump in office. So it was a polarizing election around Donald Trump. On the Republican side, more people voting for him. On the Democratic side, more people voting against him. That was in 2020. All right, so the Libertarian Party, as I said, has been hurt by this whole controversy. And we've seen, and I've reported on how the new Liberal Party has taken a lot of libertarian voters under its fold and has state affiliates in various places around the country, and they run candidates, libertarian candidates. And also, last month, there was a new party that was formally organized. It had been in development for, I don't know, a long time, 6 years or more. And this is under the chairmanship of an actor named Mark Pellegrino. This is the American Capitalist Party. Let me bring up a picture of that just so you have some sense of what I'm talking about here. All right, there's the website for the American Capitalist Party, the only political party, they say, consistently dedicated to the flourishing of human life on Earth. I don't know, that's not a very catchy slogan and almost laughable because really, do you think you're the only party? Anyway, the American Capitalist Party, not to be confused with the New Capitalist Party that this guy, this lawyer, this wealthy lawyer in Florida is creating to run for governorship there. So that is the Capitalist Party. This is the American Capitalist Party, and not to be confused with the American Capitalist Party, which existed, I don't know, many years ago in response to the Communist Party, who I mentioned earlier, a little bit of historical background. Anyway, American Capitalist Party, I think, is also aiming to attract a certain segment of the libertarian vote, although this Mark Pellegrino, he did publish a post many years ago in 2022. That's like 3 years, right? Many years. Sometimes I don't know what I'm saying. I thought this was in 2018. I'm probably thinking of a different article. Anyway, he says that the American Capitalist Party is different from libertarianism. And then he says consistent libertarians, anarchists, think the state is evil because it's a state, don't believe in objective ethics, think force is a market commodity, decouple liberty from reason, and are rationalists who decouple concepts, that is conceptual thinking, from reality. I don't know. This is a pretty broad blanket. There's a lot of different types of libertarians, and I think he is appealing to a certain type of libertarian. So we see various parties trying to pick up the libertarian vote, and it's kind of like, how shall I say this, picking at the bones of a corpse, a body that's not yet dead. So we'll see how or whether the Libertarian Party is able to return from the debacle of 2024 and either set a new course or, stay the course and find out that McArdle maybe was right. And they could actually get a candidate into U.S. Congress sometime in the next, what did she say, 12 years or so? I don't know. I'd like to see an alternative party have that kind of success. Finally, I got a story. This has to do with ballot access, which, as you saw during the presidential race, if you followed my show, is a very difficult thing for both independent candidates and for minor party candidates. There's all kind of state laws that make it hard for them to get on the ballot, not only in the presidential race, but in other races as well. And even as we speak, in various states, there are efforts to make it even harder for them to get on the ballot or to have a different type of voting system, which would enable them to have a fairer playing field. Anyway, some people who supported the independent campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in 2024, after he dropped out, decided they were going to form a fund, the More Voter Choice Fund, I think it was called, that was going to fund ballot access legal cases to help make it easier in the future for various independent or third party alternative party candidates to get on the ballot. Let me bring up a website thing from them. More voter choice. And it says freedom demands more voters, more voices. More Voter Choice Fund is a nonpartisan organization facilitating a fair and inclusive democracy. And the fund advocates for healthy political competition and diverse representation. Well, now they have decided not only are they going to fund legal challenges in ballot access cases, but they are going to actively lobby states to ease up on their ballot access requirements. And they did a presentation at the end of January to the secretaries of state from around the nation who gathered in Washington, D.C., I think it was, and talked about their aims for ballot access. So they are actively involved in doing this, working towards ballot access. You may want to check them out if that's something you like to see more of. And on their website, also, they have an interesting map which shows in their view, how difficult ballot access is in the various states. So if you can see this, if you're watching the video version of my show, you can see red states are the most difficult to get ballot access in their view, and the green states are the best. So going from best to worst would be green, then blue, then yellow, then orange, then red. And we see really only 2 states have good access. That's Alaska and Idaho. And there's about 5 states that have terrible ballot access laws. My own state here, California, and Texas, Illinois, Georgia, New York. So you can see on the map there whether or not this organization thinks your state needs better ballot access laws. And maybe you want to get, if you live in one of those states, maybe you want to get involved with them in helping to change ballot access for future elections. And that is about it, I think, for this show. This time around, thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share. I haven't been getting as many views lately, so if you know people who are interested in alternative party politics or the continuing saga of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Nicole Shanahan, who I also report on, let them know about this channel and ask them to check it out, please. And comments are always welcome. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the show and about the things I have to say. And I'll see you again probably on the weekend with some updates on Kennedy. Oh, and by the way, those of you who are interested in my comments about talking about spiritual and religious subjects, what I've decided actually is to do both things. On this channel, I'll be talking about aspects of religion that affect politics, specifically like the Christian nationalist movement. And on a new channel, which I'll tell you about once I get it up and running, I'll be talking more about my views of religion and spirituality just as a topic in itself. So if you're interested in that, you could check it out when I get around to it, and I will let you know in a future show. I think I'll get that up sometime. Excuse me, next week. All right, so that's about it for this show, and hope to see some comments. Love to hear what you have to say, and that's it. Bye for now.